What happened in Episode 9 of Westworld Season 2, Vanishing Point? What did we learn about the Man in Black, and how does it set us up for the season finale next week? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. This video is brought to you with the support of my patrons. If you'd like to support this channel or get access to some exclusive audio content, please do check out my Patreon page. And this is your spoiler warning if you're not up to speed with Westworld. If last week's episode focusing on Ketcheta was the most emotional of the season, this surely was the most tragic. And the heart of that tragedy was the Man in Black's family, and who the Man in Black truly is, and what he is like. But let's start with Logan, who was off camera in this episode as he has been for most of the season, but his presence or absence was felt nonetheless. It seems that what had been hinted at previously was the truth of it. His experience in the park with William, and then his understanding of what was really going on with the Delos research project, led him into a steep decline of substance abuse. He tried to tell his sister, William's wife Juliet, and also his niece Emily about what William was really like, and the morally questionable project he was doing with Delos. As it turns out, William's character in Westworld was laid bare in inescapable video footage and psychological profiling, something that he scrupulously kept hidden from the outside world, but Juliet, even before she knew it, saw it, and her response, like her brother's, was alcohol abuse. So we have a picture of someone who has a darkness inside them, but this is Westworld, and things are never as two-dimensional as that. Because Ford sees something else. We learn of the agreement that held the two of them together in uneasy orbit through 3 decades. Ford would stay out of the valley beyond, and William would leave his narratives alone. In other words, they both let each other get on with their secret projects in peace. This, incidentally, helps explain why the technicians last episode were so keen to just put Ketcheta back into the park. He was a central part of one of Ford's oldest narratives, and they were under strict instructions to leave that well alone. But to return to why Ford made contact with William, it's because he saw something in him. Another layer that even he probably didn't know was there. Ford saw William's actions in Westworld more than anyone. But, as per his speech at the gala before Dolores shot him, he saw that he could change. He could see the philanthropy in the outside world, of course, and also his devotion to caring for his wife personally. But Ford also seemed to understand that William was now at a point where he was ready to face up to what he had become and what he had done. Hence, him giving him the card of the data collected on him, thinking that being faced with his crimes would push him along that path. Now, this shows Ford as an incredibly intuitive person. He must have felt that William was ready to start turning against this thing that he had created. He just needed a nudge. Surely even Ford, though, couldn't have predicted the full impact of giving him that card, that Juliet would see it, for example. But nevertheless, this was the catalyst for his changed attitude towards the Delos research project. And of course, Juliet did see it. And it appears that what she saw was too much for her, so she overdosed, just like her brother had. Which is tragedy enough, and both William and Emily seemed to initially blame themselves for it. But Juliet had left the memory card in Emily's music box, and eventually she saw it too, and saw what her father was really like. So Emily's decision to go into the park was partly in order to confront her father with what she knew, to get the whole truth about what happened with her mother's death, but she must have pieced that together, or most of it, already, so presumably the main reason was what she said next, to expose the Delos research project to the wider world, which ties in with the symbols on her hand-drawn map when we first saw her. She covered up her motivations with many lies, but ironically she was there to expose the truth. And of course, the tragedy doesn't end there. We noted earlier in the season that the Man in Black was increasingly seeing Ford's hand behind everything that was happening to him in the park. This isn't without reason. Ford had set him a last game and repeatedly confronted him with evils he had done in the past, so to confront him with Emily The last, truest reminder of his life outside the park fits with that. But William is by now really quite mentally unbalanced, and nothing would have been able to convince him that she wasn't a host sent by Ford, so he shoots her, apparently killing her. It's his realization that she wasn't a host that pushes him to finally do what he seems to have wanted to do for a long time, cut open his right arm and see if he is a host himself. Is that why he was feeling so devoid of emotion? Why he felt so strongly as if he belonged in Westworld? How he could take on public and private personalities that are so different? And is he a host? Well, we'll have to wait until the next episode to find out, but I personally hope not. Anyway, it shouldn't take away from the confirmation once more that he is now set on destroying the whole place. The Valley Beyond, Westworld, all of it. He wants to destroy the wrongs he has done. This was the central story of the episode. The tragedy of the Man in Black's relationships with his daughter and the woman he once loved. The other storylines that we will come on to now progress the plot in their own right, but are also clearly intended to be compared and contrasted to the Man in Black story. Stories of suicide and a parent's love for their child. Let's turn to Maeve. She didn't move in this episode, but there were a couple of really significant developments. First, Charlotte Hale and her technicians managed to extract the lines of coding in Maeve that allow her to do what she does. They uploaded them into Clementine, and by controlling her, they can now control and destroy all hosts within range. Expect to see Clementine used as a weapon next episode, going ahead of Delos forces to beam out signals making the hosts turn on themselves. It will be the next in a long line of abuses that poor Clementine has had to suffer. And if Maeve finds out, she won't be happy. Ford makes sure that Bernard sees this, and then takes him to Maeve so that he can pass on a pre-recorded message to her. This pre-recorded message allows us an insight into Ford's relationship with Maeve. We have known for a long time that Dolores was Arnold's favourite, but now we discover that Maeve is Ford's. This explains why we have observed so many times how Maeve is like Ford, not just in her powers but also in her single-minded pursuit of her own agenda, ability to manipulate people and so on. Ford refers to her as the closest thing he has to a child, which is where we start to see contrasts with William's relationship with his daughter. We learn that it really was Ford's idea to get Maeve off out into the mainland at the end of Season 1. It was his way of protecting her from all the suffering we've seen in Season 2. And he says that the reason he stayed, or at least one of the reasons he stayed, was to help her, as she staged to get back to her child. Ford's love for Maeve and Maeve's love for her daughter serve to underline the tragedy of William's actions towards his daughter. It's surely no coincidence that this episode was aired on Father's Day. And as he leaves, we see Ford unlock Maeve's core permissions. Whether this is undoing what Delos have just done or giving her access to even more powers is unclear, but it clearly means that she will soon be able to get off that table and escape the Mesa Hub. Back to Bernard once more. We see him with Elsie as they both escape the Mesa Hub, but he abandons her there outside, which seems quite harsh, even if he did it with her best interests at heart. But he does also do something very important and probably long overdue if he actually succeeded, which is to kick Ford out of his system. We're left to wonder where, if anywhere, this leaves Ford, but I'm sure we haven't seen the last of him. And, of course, this doesn't prevent Bernard from heading off to apparently do exactly what Ford was wanting him to do, get to the Valley Beyond. And talking of the Valley Beyond, Bernard also gives us the fullest explanation yet of what to expect there. A massive server with human guest minds uploaded onto it. So, like the Cradle, but for human consciousnesses, waiting for the technology to be ready for them to be mapped down into host bodies. And if we were wondering how they managed to capture all those guests' mind maps, well, we get a bit more information on that too. We already know that they had DNA on all the guests, and video and everything they did was recorded by the hosts, but it seems that they were also continually monitoring their brains, seeing how they reacted to different stimuli through a scanner in each of the hats they had been given. Ingenious, if perhaps a little reliant on guests keeping their hats on at all times. But I, for one, am grateful that Bernard seems to finally have reached a point where he can be proactive once more. He says he is going to do it his way, whatever it is. The original plan seemed to have been to get control of the Valley Beyond facility, known as the Forge, and then use that as leverage to get every side to come to some sort of agreement. We're left to see whether Bernard sticks to that plan, or can stick to it, once Dolores and the Ghost Nation and Delos and the Man in Black and probably Maeve all descend on the same place. But the episode ends with Dolores and Teddy. We see the promised confrontation between Dolores and the Ghost Nation. As expected, they have very different views to one another, though perhaps surprisingly it's the Ghost Nation who draw first. The Ghost Nation lose some warriors, and Dolores loses the last of her Wyatt cultists. But the more interesting thing is what happens afterwards. Teddy lets one of the Ghost Nation go free, against Dolores' orders. It's not the first time he's done this, of course. He refused to execute the Confederados earlier in the season, and showed some compassion by giving the doomed technician on the train a bullet to save himself the pain of a train crash. And it's soon clear that he is questioning his reprogramming. Or, to be more precise, his reprogramming hasn't fundamentally changed his concerns about Dolores' methods or objectives. She tells him she changed him in order for him to survive, but he only sees that he has become like the people he thought he was fighting, and he sees where Dolores is taking them. His suicide may have been shocking, but perhaps it wasn't unexpected. Teddy sees the darkness inside himself and where it's heading. He can't leave Dolores or kill her because he loves her too much. So the only option he sees left is to end his own involvement in her plans. Dolores' pain in her loss is clear, but what is also clear is that she is now alone as a direct result of her own actions. She may have started the Host Rebellion, but she now has no one standing by her side. Once more, we return to the mirroring of the Man in Black storyline. He lost the last person he perhaps cared about, just as Dolores just has. They have lost their followers and allies, and all they both now have is the Valley Beyond. So that is where they are both heading. If you're enjoying my Westworld content, you may also like my Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire videos. Please do check them out on my channel page, and do subscribe here if you enjoyed this video. As I said, please do also check out my Patreon page if you're interested in supporting me make more videos like this, or if you want to access some exclusive audio content. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.